So this session will completely be an interactive session. So I will be going through the basics first, and I will be showing you a code snippets. I mean a code project where the things which I'm going to thought will be implemented in that, right? So first of all, let me give you a brief introduction of me. Like I'm Navayan Subramanian. So I have around 4 years of experience developing web and mobile apps. So I'm currently a product engineer in a product-based company called Lavox. So in this session, we are going to see about APIs, right? So we are going to see why should we learn how to utilize and how to write an API in an efficient way, and what its importance in the current software engineering. So without a delay, let's start with the session. Let me present the screen, right? Is my screen visible? Nice. So let's start with today's session. So REST API, right? So we are actually using more applications in our day-to-day life, right? So we are using mobile apps, we are using websites, and we are using even desktop apps, right? So the one thing which is common for all these applications is the REST API. So what is a REST API? Right? So REST API is something which we, in a layman term, we can say it connects two services. It can connect a front end and a back end, or it can connect a backend with another backend or something like that. So basically, like a communication between two machines in current days are done using the REST APIs. Right? So how was it before? So REST APIs are the modern things. We are using REST APIs now. But before REST APIs, how are things were communicated? Right? So basically, if you go to a browser and just do google.com, right? So what it will do is it will return a HTML page. So for example, if I go to another tab and say google.com, if I open the debug menu and go to the network tab and reload it again, you can see there has been a request that was went to Google, I mean the root file, and we got a response as the HTML page. So this is the basic HTTP GET request that we are actually forwarding. But giving a request and accepting HTML as a response may not work in most of the cases. Why? Because we need the data, we need a pure data to be transmitted from a service to another service to do some, how to say, some complex or some more advanced stuff. Right? So what do we need now? We need the data to be transmitted, not the HTML page. Right? So for the data to be transmitted, the data needs to be understood by most of the common languages or common platforms, right? Let's say you are speaking Telugu and I'm speaking Malayalam. When I talk to you, you won't understand anything because the language that I'm speaking will not be understood by you, right? So we need a common medium, we need a common language, or we need a common format by which we can communicate so that Each and every language can understand the data that we are sending and receiving, right? So let's take like what are the platforms that are available right now? So we have like web app, we have mobile app, and we have desktop app, and even we have apps on watches, right? So we need the universal data type, and that data type is JSON. So previous to JSON, XML was used. So XML is also a data transfer object, which means like we can actually transfer data in a XML format. But parsing XML data and like proceeding with that is a bit much harder when compared to JSON. Basically, JSON stands for JavaScript Object Notation. So most of the languages, most of the framework supports JSON either in a deserializable or serializable way. So the data that we are actually going to transmit or is being transmitted is completely in the JSON format, right? So how is this going to help in our REST API journey? So instead of transferring the HTML page as a response, or instead of getting HTML image as a response, what we are going to do is we are going to transfer JSON as a response, which means the data is going to be carried out in a JSON format and it is going to be read and transmitted using a JSON format. So this is the basic of like how we are actually going to transfer the data format. So up and until now, like, do you have any questions? So if you have any questions until now, you can actually shoot them. You can actually put it up on a chat or something like that. You don't have to raise your hands. Okay, great. So let's move to the next one. So let's see like what is a REST API, right? So we are talking about APIs and we are talking about REST API. So REST is a protocol, which stands for Representational State Transfer. So REST is a protocol. Uh, I mean HTTP is a protocol. REST is a standard that is being built on top of HTTP. So it runs on a TCP protocol. So what do you mean by like state transfer, right? So what is a state in the like first place? So state is something which holds a value. Let's say like you are logging into a Facebook, right? So you're giving in your email ID, you're giving in your password, right? So once you log in, it's take you to the home page, right? What if you are going to give a friend request to a friend and it's asked for a login again, you won't be annoyed, right? Because you don't want that. You have just logged in and you want that state to be hold until after some time after 10 days or 20 days. So you won't need to log, I mean, you won't need to authorize yourself each time whenever you're doing some actions, right? So we need to hold a state so that the user experience, so that the working of these things will be flawless. So that is what a state means. But the HTTP requests are stateless, which means if you give a request, that is a standalone request. Let's say like you are asking for your friend's data. That friend's data request is nothing to do with the login request. So we have to say something to the server like, hey, this is Navayon. I just logged in and I need to get my friend's data, right? So for this, we will be using a access token, and that will come under a separate topic. But just let you guys know, like this will be uh, done using a access token, right? So this is fun. Let's move on to the next part. So how does REST work? Right? So REST work like all of the frameworks, which means like you are giving a request and the server will fetch the data, do some operations, and get back to you with the responses. Right? But there are some rules, there are some fundamentals, and there are some standards that needs to be made. So let's say like you're actually going to get some data, right? It won't make sense if you go and like ask. data in a different format, right? So there has to be some fundamentals or there has to be some standards so that each and every language or each and every framework can follow that to get and fetch and retrieve the data. So what are those rules, right? So there are like uh, 5 methods that we can use for uh, transfer of data. There are like HTTP get, post, put, patch, and delete. So we'll see them like one by one on like when and where and how to use those. So just before proceeding with this, like do you people have any experience developing web app or mobile app up until now? Great, nice, not an issue. So these are the methods that I just told you. It's post, get, put, patch, and delete. So post type of requests are actually being used to create the entity in a database or create an entry in the server. Right? Get is to read, put is to update, patch is also for an update, but put actually replaces the whole object, the whole entry. Patch just updates some properties of a whole entry. So don't worry if you can't completely understand any of this because like we have a we have a hands-on right now, so I'll be like showing you the code samples of how these requests are being used in an application, so you will get a full view of like what's going on under the hood, right? So just remember the names and just understand like what each type of request is used for, so that like when I open the code and show you some things, you will get to understand it better, right? So these are the methods that we will be using to transfer the data, modify the data in the server from a client. So the next question will be like, how can we access that data or how can we fire that request, right? So these requests can be fired using a HTTP URL. So this is a basic URL that we could have actually seen in many browsers. We'll have google.com, facebook.com URLs like this, right? So we have the same URL to be we are used for communication with the HTTP request. So these requests can be accessed using endpoints. So this is an endpoint, and there are like multiple parts in this endpoints, right? So if you look at this, this is a whole string, right? Domain.com/API/v1/user/10. But this could be break down into these parts. So the domain.com is a domain name. For example, if we are going to google.com, google.com is a domain name, right? So AP/v2/users/10. This is a route. In this route, we have slash API, which represents an API. We have slash v2 that represents a version, right? We have slash users, which represents a module. So let's say you are going to fetch a user's data. You are hitting slash users route. But let's say you are going to fetch some other data, like your friend's request, right? You'll be hitting slash friends route and you will be receiving the data of your friends. And the slash 10 here, this represents the user ID. So for example, if you want to like get your friends data, the URL will be like domain.com/API/v1/friends. That's all. So if you hit slash friends, you will get all your friends data. And if you have a friend ID and you want to get the particular friends data, you have to use like slash friends and then your friends ID. So this is a nomenclature of how we need to form a REST API URL. We can modify this. This is not something like a syntax or what to say a language token which will throw an error if you not write this way. It's a convention. So if we follow this, most of the other developers will be able to get like what they are actually going to get when they're hitting a particular URL, right? So this is a basic structure of HTTP URL, and like this is how like we can transfer the data. So there are 4 things: route param, query param, body, and header, right? So the thing which we just discussed, the user slash ID here, right? So this is called as a route param because this will be a variable. This will change according to each user, right? Because every user will have a unique ID. And if we are going to get a user's detail, we need to provide them their ID. So this will be modified. And this is called as a route param. And the param which is coming after the question mark, right? This is called as a query param. So in most cases, these query params will be used to filter the data. So in this condition, you can see like we are actually getting the user's data and the max age is 12, which means like we are filtering the users where the maximum age is 12, which means we are filtering the users who have aged from 0 to 12. So that is what this request means. And then we have body, right? So when we are actually entering a user's data, we are actually posting some user's data. We can pass the data as a JSON object in the body. So this is the JSON that I was actually talking about, right? So these are the forms that we can actually like use to transfer the data. But what about response? So how can we get the response from a request, right? So we can get a response from a request in like two ways. One is the status codes. Status codes are very much important. So status codes tell us like how well the request has been resolved, if it has been failed, or if it has been redirected, or if the resource that we are actually searching was not found, or if the request that we are actually giving is being successful or created. So these statuses are being transmitted or being communicated through status code, and the data will be communicated through the JSON object that we are receiving in the body. So what are the status codes that we have? So status codes varies from 100 to 500. And if the status code is from 100 to 199, that is means like it is an informational responses. So if it is 200 to 299, it's mostly like successful responses. So the request is 201, right? That means like request has resource has been created. If a request is 200, which means the thing which we actually requested or the thing which we actually want to do is being successful. So redirectional messages are something like, let's say I'm hitting a URL, but the resource is not available on that particular URL. So what I will be doing is I will redirect that request to another URL. So these kind of things are can be done using 300 to 399, and 400 to 499 are client error responses, which means like the server is expecting some data in a format, but the client is not providing the data in that particular format. So we are saying like, hey, you need to send the data in a correct format. So in these kind of error responses, we will use 400 to 500, but like the server error response is 500 to 599, right? So this states that there has been error in a server and there is nothing that the client or the other things that might do. The server team or the backend team will have to fix it. So these are the possible HTTP requests, and you would have familiar with 404, right? So 404 comes under client error responses because we are actually trying to access something, but that particular resource was not present, right? So these are the like HTTP status codes that we have, and I'm actually happy to answer any questions if you have any. So you can actually shoot your questions in the chat window if you have. Great. So the next part will not be a presentation. So I will be showing you a code on like how and I mean how well these requests are being used, right? So let me open up my code base. So you can see the Visual Studio code, right? So this is a basic React structure, right? So there are three things that I want to focus here. One is how we are actually going to make an HTTP request, and another one is how are we going to handle it efficiently, and the third one will be the HTTP client, right? So let's say like you actually want to like fire up a HTTP request to a server, right? You can't do it just like that. You need a HTTP client to do that. So in this case, I have Axios installed. So Axios is a library that we can actually use to send and receive the HTTP request, right? So using this library, we are actually going to create a HTTP client. So we have like a HTTP client class, and we have five methods: delete, patch, post, put, and get, right? So using this HTTP client class, we are going to make some operations so that like the data is going to be stored and retrieved. So you people are clear until now, right? Because I don't know like how many of you are familiar with programming, or how many of you are actually started learning, and this is a little bit of advanced stuff for you. So if you have any doubts, just please feel free to stop me. And yes, Chaudhary, just raised your hand. So yes, please feel free to stop me whenever you want and clear any doubts you have, right? Great. So as I said earlier, we need a HTTP client to make a request, right? So once we do this, like once we install an HTTP client, we need the base URL, right? So we need the domain name that we are actually going to hit the request. So that domain name is jsonplaceholder.typecode.com. So this is a service, and they will provide us a dummy APIs, right? So we can use this to practice ourselves when we are actually learning. We can take a note of it too. So these people have like many APIs that in a site. So we are actually going to use users data. But if you go to it and go down here, they have posts, comments, albums, photos, to-dos, and users. So you can use these resources to make a request and do whatever you want, right? Nice. So we are actually going to use JSON So our route has been cleared, right? So to make an HTTP request, we need the route and we need the data. So our route has been clear now, but how are we actually going to request the data, right? Because if you want to like create a user, we need the structure, right? So this is the structure. So this is a JSON object. I mean, this is a JavaScript object, but it can be considered as a JSON too. And this is the data that we are actually going to insert in a server. So I have a hook here, which means I have a method here. So I'm actually going to tell you like how to do this in efficient way, right? So there is a library called React Query, and you can actually use it to cache and perform some like chronological operations on an API call. So let's say you're actually going to fetch all the users' data from your server. And after 10 seconds or 5 seconds, if you need to do it again, you don't need to hit the server again, right? Because we just got the data 10 seconds back. So we can use it. So this kind of things is called caching, which means like we are actually using a previous data for the upcoming process, right? So we are using existing data for the upcoming process. So this is called caching. And to do this and to do some other advanced stuff, we are actually using React Query here. And this library will make sure like these layer of caching and this layer of advanced steps are implemented, so we don't have to worry about like what is going to happen and when this data is going to be fetched or something like that. We will ask like, hey, give me the user's detail, and it will give us a user's detail whether it's from cache or from server. So it will handle like when to give which. Right? So I have created separate methods, I mean separate hooks for each request. One is for create user, and another one is for delete user, and another one is for fetch user, and another one is for update user. Right? So I have like imported and used these things here, and I have three buttons. So button one is to create a new user. Button two is to update a new user. Button three is to delete a new user. So if a button one got clicked, this will fire up a create user HTTP method. And if a button two got clicked, it will fire up a update user HTTP method. And if a button three got clicked, it will fire up a delete user HTTP method. So this is the stuff that a React developer can easily understand. But what I will be doing is like I will make it as a blog and will post it in somewhere, and you can access it right there, right? So you can actually read it whenever you want, so that you understand like what is happening, and how these things are being implemented from scratch. So, and I will also share you a GitHub link to this code base, right? So you can actually get it and go through it if you want. So this code will be available to you. So this is a publicly available code. I'll share you the code base link here, and we'll also share you the blog link in that GitHub README file. So you can read both of them, right? So if you have any questions, you can actually uh, shoot it up right now. Come on, guys, ask some questions. Yes. So in the meantime, like I'll just give you the code of what it is. Are these codes used in software or any web pages to create it? Actually I have made this code to demonstrate you on like how these things work, right? So this code is specifically made for you people. So you can actually like go and view it. Also, just give me a moment. I'll also share the blogs link here. What is the basic needs of web development, sir? So you have to learn HTML and CSS. That is a bare basics of a web development because you definitely need to understand the fundamentals before like going into any frameworks or libraries, right? So I would suggest you to first learn HTML, CSS, and then JavaScript. So please don't skip the JavaScript part and dive directly into React or Angular. That will not work because like you may feel like you have done like I mean you have learned many things, but it's not like that, right? You have to clear your fundamentals first. So focus on HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and then like you can actually move to React or Angular if that's what you want. Um, so you get to see like you get to understand like how and why we are actually using React and these things, right? So yes, start from HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and then move to React or Angular. That should implement these codes after learning basic code for improve on development. So you can listen, right? So you can implement this on any React project because I have made a basic outline on how to make a efficient API request. Right? So this is just an example. So you can implement this code in wherever you are actually going to make an API request in React. So that will work fine in React or React Native. In both cases, it will work fine. Any other questions? And which programming languages are commonly used in web or app developing? I would say JavaScript because using JavaScript we can develop a mobile app in React Native using React Native and also web app using JavaScript because website runs in JavaScript, right? Pretty much you can develop, I mean, all the type of application using JavaScript. You can develop a desktop app, you can develop a mobile app, you can develop a web app because like there is a framework called Electron and using that framework you can actually develop most of the kind of application using JavaScript. And for backend also, you can actually use Node.js. That also will work. So any other questions? So I'm sending you the blog link here. So this is that blog I was actually talking with you. So this contains a step-by-step, what to say, step-by-step instruction of like how the code base that I just showed you has made. So there are like some parts that you can understand like what is going through. So it will be covered from basics, right? So what is HTTP APIs? Why are we using Axio and creating an HTTP client? So this is a step-by-step tutorial of like how you can actually create a code base like this, which I showed you from scratch, right? So you can see this, and if you have any doubts, you can actually ping me on LinkedIn,